Welcome to the Pittsburgh Steelers Daily Fantasy Team Preview. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Russell Clay. Taking a look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and all their kind of DFS implications on this upcoming season. Obviously, a pretty friendly offense, but obviously, I mean, we need one of those intros where, like, I just have a big puff of weed smoke, because I think that just would go hand in hand with the Steelers. I mean, just given that their offense is, clearly marijuana friendly.
Well, again, we talk about Martavis Bryant, and he was a fourth-round pick for a reason, He would have been a first-round pick had he not had trouble at Clemson. So, I mean, he's always had the skill, and this stuff just happens with fourth-round picks. So it is unfortunate. I think all of us want to see that team at full strength at some point, but it just doesn't.
Sober.
Yeah, at least slightly sober. But I mean, obviously he's not really a factor this year, but that's a huge loss. And I guess we'll get started off with Ben Roethlisberger, but I mean, the real focus is going to be on what Sammy Coates does to sort of replace him, and if he can replace him.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, obviously Bryant's 92 targets last year. I mean, it's a big drop. I mean, obviously no one was close to Antonio Bryant giving you 203. And you expect that number to be very similar this year. But yeah, I think the secondary pieces are pretty clear, especially because Heath Miller's gone as well. That's 88 targets missing. So you're looking at, nearly 200 targets they're gone up for grabs, and guys like Marcus Wheaton behind them. Obviously, the backfield situation will play into the passing game. But as you mentioned, I mean, Coates is a guy with a lot of potential.
Yeah, so in terms of the running game, D'Angelo Williams plays the first 4 games. We're locking him in cash, kind of like we did at the end of last year. It's just pretty obvious, I believe he's like 7,100 on FanDuel week 1 or something like that. So as long as he's that reasonably priced, you're just going to be firing him in the first 4 weeks. And I mean, with a healthy Roethlisberger, this team is in cash game play pretty much regardless of who they're facing every week, including Antonio Brown. I mean, those 3, Roethlisberger, the running back, whoever's starting, and Brown, are cash game plays pretty much every week.
Yeah, certainly. And you mentioned Williams. I mean, last year he was a guy 970 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns. He also caught 40 passes, which was kind of encouraging for him, given the fact that, PPR scoring, that's kind of an added bonus there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. This is definitely a fun team for fantasy. I mean, really on all aspects, just because they are so balanced and they're so efficient offensively. And also with Ladarius Green there, I think that's going to draw a lot of excitement with his name. Just because Heath Miller's gone. And Green's always been kind of a popular guy in the Twitter fantasy world, just because he's been behind Antonio Gates and been such a intriguing option. We're kind of wait for him to kind of break out. And this could be the year. I mean, he's obviously a big tight end, 6'6". He's certainly going to be a target in the red zone.
And all those years in San Diego, it was like, all right, Gates is on his last leg. Ladarius Green is the super athletic freak. That's right behind him. And now he finally left, and he's finally in a position to actually break out, actually have a role, actually get snaps. I mean, there's no Gates anymore. So, and he's obviously in a potentially prolific offense. So I actually think he has more upside if he can get on the field than a Sammy Coates. And I guess this is sort of a hot takey type of thing, but I can see Sammy Coates being that guy that is that sneaky under the radar guy. And everyone envisions him to be Martavis Bryant. And he is a prolific deep threader. He was in college, averaged over 21 yards per reception. But I feel like a lot of this stuff is going to go to Wheaton and Green and Brown. And Coates is going to end up being like a chalky contrarian play some weeks where it's not even that much of an advantage because there's going to be a lot of people on him. So I'm looking at a guy like Wheaton, guys like Green in this offense as sort of the tournament guys to go along with Brown and Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's not like Wheaton was that far off of Bryant last year as far as targets go. I mean, he had 78 to Bryant's 92. So it wasn't like there was a clear-cut difference between those two being on the field. But also, I mean, overall, this offense is going to be something that's as you mentioned, I mean, on a week-to-week basis, regardless of who they're playing, is going to be talented. And as far as the strength of schedule goes for them, I mean, it's very solid. And obviously in that division, playing up against the Baltimore Ravens defense, it's not quite what it's been in the past. The Browns twice. They also play Indy. They play Buffalo, Philly. So they do have some really nice defenses that kind of target, and especially could be involved in some shootouts.
And we didn't mention Darius Hayward-Bay yet, but he's kind of the guy that's going to be vying for some of those deep targets as well. And he's going to be one of those min-priced guys that we look at and we're like, all right, well, how do we fit these stars and scrubs in here? Well, Darius Hayward-Bay got 5 targets last week, and you know what? Some weeks it's going to work out. So, I mean, that's kind of the general passing game consensus on that team.
Yeah, definitely, and I think we should kind of talk about Le'Veon Bell when he comes back too, because it's also gonna not throw a wrench into things, but it's obviously gonna take a little bit away from those secondary pieces. I think you're gonna see a slight drop in production, to where it's gonna be just that focal point of using Brown and Bell heavily.
Yeah, and I think people made a bit of a false narrative with the Bryant and Wheaton stuff over the last few years, where their roles don't really collide because Wheaton plays a lot closer to the line of scrimmage. So guys, like when Le'Veon Bell comes back, that is stuff that's going to kill Wheaton because he's going to be getting all those short dump offs and stuff like that. And that's kind of where Wheaton excels. So when you're looking at Bell, when he comes back, the real guy that's going to get hurt by that is Wheaton and potentially Darius Green, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And as far as attacking the Pittsburgh Steelers with opposing teams, they're kind of trending back upwards. And as far as being a top defensive team, I mean, we saw that last year. They weren't bad after kind of the year before where they really fell off. So I think they still will be involved in some shootouts against above average offenses. But as far as kind of using average opponents against them, it's something I'll be staying away from.
Right. They're still not a dominant defense, but they do have some really athletic, young, and promising pieces, especially those linebackers there. So I definitely agree with that point.
Yeah, definitely. So that's going to wrap things up with our Pittsburgh team preview. Be sure to check out the rest of the teams at dailyfantasycafe.com.